Our next presentation will be on the county clerk's office, and it will be presented by Elizabeth Comfort.
Madam Chair, if I may, so Clerk Sherry Hall is rightly focusing on elections right now.
Yes.
So she has asked if Elizabeth Comfort, the finance director, will present her department's budget, and Elizabeth agreed, so that's why Sherry is not here herself.
Yes, thank you for that clarification. Appreciate it. She's not a COVID person. She's, in the middle of what she needs to do in her job. Thank you. Ms. Comfort.
All right. Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to just briefly review the county clerk's budget presentation for fiscal year 22-23. I will start with tab 5, page 3, which is the Performance-Clackamas results measures. There are many goals there. However, they are mandated by our statute, and the office meets or exceeds these statutory requirements. Tab 5, page 4 are the program profiles. This slide outlines the various divisions in the clerk's office. There are 5 of those. The clerk's office is in the general fund. However, it creates enough revenue to offset its own operations, so it does not pull from the general fund. And every program under the clerk's umbrella, except for passport services, are mandated either by county, federal, or state. And all programs meet the Performance-Clackamas measures. Tab 5.5 is a summary by fund. Again, there are 5 divisions in the clerk's office, and there are 19 FTEs. This past fiscal year, we budgeted extra dollars on the possibility of holding countywide recall elections. Those elections did not take place, so you'll see a decrease in the new fiscal year proposed budget by 4.8%, just over $200,000. On tab 5, page 6 is our pie chart showing that there's 91% of the revenue is from these charges and fees, and 50% of the expenses are from personnel, the 19 FTE. Tab 5, slide 7 is a summary of our revenue and expenditures for the clerk's office. Again, most of the clerk's revenue is derived from recording fees. The office receives a certain percentage based on the statute of each recorded document, and that revenue is sent to various other offices that is mandated by the statute. This budget is very conservative, a projection of the future revenue, just an increase of 3%, and this is due to the uncertainty of the housing market. The market dictates recorded document revenue, and some documents have been reduced also in number of pages due to efficiencies in technology, and that takes away from the recording revenue. And again, the largest expense is the 19 full-time employees and the expenses. Material and services includes cost to produce ballots and maintaining the equipment to use to process ballots. Material and services also has rising costs due to inflation. The 12% increase reflects the cost of material and services to produce the ballots, and paper costs have increased dramatically. Now, any surplus revenue from the clerk's office does remain in the general fund, as we talked about earlier. For example, in 1920, the clerk's office produced a surplus of $1.9 million, and just last year in 2021, the clerk's office produced a surplus of $2.9. We are anticipating a surplus of $630,000 in this current year. However, in the current status that we have of the May 17th election, we are anticipating additional costs, and so we are looking to use those additional cost savings for these expenses. Tab 5.8, page 8. These 2 significant issues are just a reflection of the clerk's office, which is subject to inflation and the housing market. And that concludes my presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. First, we have Commissioner Smith, and then I have a quick question, and then Commissioner Savas.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you, Elizabeth, for bringing those numbers forward on the surplus. As folks know, we're incurring a huge amount of expenses to complete the counting of the May 17th election. And those expenses are unanticipated. by the very least. And we don't know what those expenses are going to be yet because we're not sure on the timeline exactly. We have a pretty good timeline. We will make and even exceed the June 13th certification. We're very confident of that because of the great work of county administration and our EOC staff. And thank you for bringing these numbers forward, Elizabeth. I asked for them. It's nice to hear that in the clerk's budget, she has a $630,000 surplus. Commissioners, don't be alarmed if we use all of that and even more for what's going on. And I asked Elizabeth to specifically address that, and I want to thank you for that very much. That's all I have to say.
All right, thank you very much. And my question is really, I guess, kind of a simple one, or I don't know the answer kind of thing, so I hope you... I noticed that in many, many years now, the FTE for the clerk's office has been absolutely consistent. So I guess my question is, what would cause, what happens where that office, unlike many others, would need to have new employees, or why does it stay on such an even keel, which is great, but it's a curiosity question more so than anything, I guess.
They rely on temp employees during the ballot election time, and so we use temporary employees which do not, they're not reflected in the FTEs for the department. So we have about 100 for each ballot reading period.
Okay. Well, that's great. Thank you. I did not realize that, because I always think of part-time people, like 2 of them make 1 FTE, so that was where my brain was going. Back in the business world, that's kind of what you do. But so that helps me a lot. So there are some temporary workers, and there's lots of bodies there to help do the work when there is a time that it is needed, but they're not there all year long. So thank you. I appreciate that. Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, so Elizabeth, can you help me out with, on tab 5, page 7, I'm looking at the expenses, and personnel is, percentage-wise, is flat at 0%, and, materials and services are a little bit more realistic at 12%. But why is personnel services at 0%?
That is a great question. I saw that too. It's an increase of $7,300, which isn't enough to prompt a percentage. Do you know, Sandra?
That's the exact answer. So if we move decimal places, you would see that percentage change. But the 7,300 is not enough to round up to a percentage, a whole percent.
Was there a retirement of a senior employee that might have been replaced at a lower step? Do you know? That might have come into play.
Yeah.
Yeah, the answer is yes, and she's had some vacancy savings as well, so the net is that is true. There's only about a 7,000 increase.
Well, from a budgeting standpoint, carryover's carryover, right? So if there's an unfilled position, that would show as a carryover. The budgeted positions are the budgeted positions, whether they were filled or not. And using the 5.1% number that the assessor's office used, I come up with a $111,000 increase in personnel cost at 5.1%. But that's not reflected here.
They'll maintain the FTEs of 19, but if there's a vacancy, the dollars won't be spent and they won't appear. So,
But if is one thing, budgeting's another.
sure.
And so I'm just looking at the $2,180,000 number for personnel services times 5.1%. That's $111,000.
Yeah, let me look into how the staffing model is and what they're doing for this year. Maybe they're anticipating a vacancy for the first 6 months on a replacement. Let me find out on that, and I can report back after lunch. Okay.
And Elizabeth,
Right.
if I may, that is part of the answer. There's one vacant position that they're not going to fill until January because they've got somebody in training and they just couldn't support the position any sooner. So one of the changes that we made for fiscal year 22-23 is we asked the departments to prorate for vacancies. So if they had a vacant position that just because of the recruitment shortages wasn't going to be filled right away. We generated a budgetary savings by not budgeting for the full year for a position. So that's one. The other is our budget practices is that if a position becomes vacant as a part of the budget, let's say that the current fill is at the max of the salary, the new vacancy, we budget at the mid-range. And so that change will generate a savings from one budget year to the next.
Thank you. Yeah.
Does that 5.1% as reflected in taxation, does that reflect full roll-ups?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
Is that with fringe benefits, with and without?
Yes, yes.
So what we're looking here in personnel services is a complete payroll?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Could lose everything. Mr. Cernat.
A couple questions on tab 5.3. Just given the current issues with elections, would it maybe be reasonable to add a performance measure based on how long it takes to get results from elections?
That's a great idea, and that's entirely up to the clerk as she revises her department's strategic plan, yes.
Okay. And then the other question that I had was, I know that it wouldn't be reflected in this because of timing, but are they anticipating any costs with potentially finding a new printing vendor?
Unclear yet. We're going to do an entire after-action report once the ballots are certified. Right now, we're all focused on certifying the ballots. After that, we're going to ask all those very good questions. Yes.
Thank you.
Seeing no other questions, thank you very much, Ms. Comfort, for that report. Appreciate it.